and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I'm your host, Alasius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you, Lacey?
I am fabulous. Spring is in the air, almost summer, and we've got plenty to talk about.
Lots and lots of stuff going on. Yeah, so on today's episode, we'll talk a little bit about the Trump trial real quick, and then we'll talk about Trump claiming to be or that Joe Biden was trying to assassinate him. Republicans don't want Trump's bad behaviors in the past to be mentioned on the House floor anymore. And then we'll talk a little bit about how people think we're still in a recession, even though we're not. The economy's doing really well. We'll talk some fun clips on Trump's crowd size, and Nikki Haley kind of wussed out and endorsed Trump. And we got some interesting stuff with kind of what happened in the different generations financially, and how that can affect you and affects kind of the government and the country and how everything works. So lots and lots of fun stuff, all that and more. So I'll just start real quick. I'll just mention the Trump trial. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Right now, jury's in deliberation. So they wrapped up. Jury's the second day of deliberation right now. So if you're watching this, then this is Thursday. Anyway, so, we'll see what it is. The jury yesterday they asked for some notes. They asked to hear some of the jury instructions again on what they can and can't convict on. They also asked for some of the testimony from David Pecker and I think one of the other of the prosecution witnesses, which tells me they're probably looking to convict. It's just they're trying to parse out, what they want to do, or if they have maybe one holdout or something like that. So, there's still a potential for a hung jury, but at this point, I don't think he's going to get acquitted. I would bet money he doesn't get acquitted. But yeah. So we'll see what the jury does, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on and what the possibilities are, but I'm pretty sure he's going to get convicted.
At least of some of the charges. If I remember correctly, the instructions were basically, he's guilty of everything. He's guilty of some of the things.
Yeah.
And that they could sort of split things out. So they might split things out. Who knows?
Yeah, I think they're going to nail him on all of them, but
you think?
But yeah, the Stormy Daniels one was the only one that was kind of in question. But since you had them do the other two, and then you had Cohen doing the other one, the only thing is, okay, well, Cohen's a liar. Well, yeah, we know that, but everything he said was corroborated by everybody else, so we don't have to take his word, right? It's already, he is one of those guys where if he told me the sky was blue, I'd still go outside and check, but if I've already been outside and seen that it's blue, or you've shown me that, and then he tells me the sky's blue, well, I already know. That's what the prosecution did. He already showed it to you. That way when Cohen said it, you were like, okay, that's all true. So you didn't need to believe him. You'd already verified it. So we'll see how it all plays out going on, but I'm pretty sure they're going to convict. The only other thing that could happen is a hung jury. And that would just be one person just decides to hold out for whatever reason. But anyway, I wanted to cover this. We kind of missed this one, so we're kind of a little late, but this one was it was funny to me. So Fox News and Trump were all hot about this. So in the stolen documents trial, where he stole all the top secret documents, the sort of espionage trial in Florida, it's a federal trial. Walt Nauta, who's one of the co-conspirators on that, who worked for Trump, he tried to get the judge to dismiss his case, and they took it to court and to do this dismissal. And so Jack Smith, who's trying the case, the special prosecutor, he brought in all the evidence of Walt Nauta doing stuff, and he brought in the search warrant and and we'll get into a little bit of that. But part of the search warrant had on it that the use of deadly force authorization, which is on the search warrant. But they spun that as they're trying to assassinate Trump. Biden's trying to kill Trump. And we're going to jump in with Jesse Waters trying to make that point. It's just stupid.
Fox News alert, a major bombshell in the Trump documents case. The FBI authorized the use of deadly force during the Mar-a-Lago raid. This according to documents filed by Trump's legal team. Agents in unmarked polo shirts plan to bring standard issue weapons, ammo, handcuffs, medium and large size bolt cutters, and even lock picking equipment as they prepare to go door to door at Mar-a-Lago. And they did, ransacking Melania Trump's bedroom along with Barron Trump's bedroom. The FBI also took extensive photographs of Melania and Barron's rooms for no apparent reason. Think about this for a second.
All right, hold on. Can we just stop there for a second?
Go ahead.
So, in case y'all didn't notice, Melania's room and Barron's room. Who has their own bedroom here?
All of them. Oh, we've known for a while they sleep in separate bedrooms. She doesn't sleep with Trump.
No, she did once, unless they did it scientifically.
Well, I'm sure she's done it a couple times, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why she didn't care about the affairs, as long as she didn't have to do it. Right?
Listen, she's probably like paying him herself, man, through her allowance or something.
Yeah, we'll see. I still think it's funny. They came in with bolt cutters and lock picking sets. Yeah, because sometimes you got to get into doors. Sometimes people don't cooperate.
Oh my God.
They brought standard issued guns. Yeah, they're required to carry them.
And they're finding the porn under the teenager's mattress.
Well, here's the thing, though. This is what's so funny. So, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they've got his Playboy. Here's what's so funny to me. Okay, I'm an ex-cop. I've been on that. I've written warrants before to have judges sign them and whatnot. So the use of deadly force thing. So in a warrant, it's standard to have that in there, but it restricts your use of deadly force. It's not the same as when you're on the street. Because in this case, there are a lot of you, you're armed, so you have to be more cautious. So you can only use deadly force, right, in the instance when you're serving a warrant, in the instance that the person is an imminent threat, serious threat, like serious physical injury or death to somebody else or you. That's the only time you can use it in that scenario. And imminent being the key word there, because it changes the stakes for the use of force. So it actually restricts what you can do as a police officer in a warrant. Now, what's funny about this is the warrant was issued a couple days. They notified Trump's lawyers a couple days before they went there. Right? Because they didn't assume that he would try to hide documents. They assumed it was going to be like everybody else they've ever done this to, where they just give over the documents. Because when Biden found him, he just gave him over. And then when they searched Biden's house, they just took everything. Biden just let him in. And furthermore, Biden, when they searched his house, when he had documents, same warrant, same deadly force clause. It's boilerplate. It's boilerplate, right? So Biden's not trying to kill him. It's all bullshit they're making up. But it's also interesting because it really distracts from the big thing that's happening here, which isn't the deadly force thing, or that they searched the place or took photos as evidence. It's not like they released the photos of Melania or Barron's room. They're evidence, right? But this is what they were trying to hide. And so here's Alex Wagner, and she's going to cover this a little bit. This is what that whole thing about the deadly force thing was trying to cover up, was this.
Despite all of those facts, right-wing media is picking up this lie that Joe Biden wanted to kill Donald Trump down at Mar-a-Lago, and they are running with it.
This was an attempted assassination attempt on Donald John Trump.
Why was Merrick Garland prepping for a possible, shootout? Why did agents roll up, guns at the ready?
Maybe they wanted the engagement of physical force.
Deadly force. Does that mean that Joe Biden was authorizing the FBI to if it came to that and he resisted arrest, it would be okay to kill Donald Trump?
So anyway, I just wanted to show that clip. I forgot about that. But that was one of the clips. I wanted to go to the second part of her show, but I love that. No, Joe Biden didn't do that. The court authorized it. A judge signs a warrant. So a judge authorized it, and it was a standard warrant. So anyway, I want to go to this. This is what they were actually trying to cover up. My bad.
A shocking new revelation. Pay close attention to this.
It is quite shocking what we have been able to glean based on what Judge Cannon has released.
Newly released court documents revealing shocking details about the FBI's August 2022 raid on Mar-a-Lago.
If you turned on Fox News in the past 24 hours, odds are you heard that there is a shocking new revelation that just came out of some newly unsealed court filings in Donald Trump's classified documents case. Today, one of Trump's co-defendants in that case, his body man, Walt Nauta, was in court trying to get the case tossed out, which wasn't all that shocking. What was shocking were the two never-before-seen photos we got from one of the newly unsealed filings showing Walt Nauta moving boxes all around Mar-a-Lago. But that wasn't the revelation that shocked Fox News. No. These newly unsealed...
So that was what that was. So when he unsealed all that, when Jack Smith unsealed all that for this dismissal hearing, he unsealed it to show the judge, I've got photographic evidence of this guy moving top secret documents. 2 days before, right when they told Trump's lawyers that they were issuing a warrant they were going to serve, and they were going to serve at a time when they knew Trump wasn't going to be there, that same day they were notified, a few hours later, Walt Nauta's moving all these boxes, government boxes, to hide them. So it shows that he was complicit, actively complicit. That's what they were covering up with the whole "will the deadly force" thing. It's the look over here. That's how stupid they think their viewers are. And that's how stupid Trump thinks his followers are. It's that simple of a trick. It's the old, what was the bit like, what was it? Gilbert Gottfried used to do that bit, like, where what was that? He was in a movie, it was the cops telling him, I got to arrest you for all these unpaid parking tickets. And he's like, what? You got to arrest me? Look, you're holding those parking tickets in this hand. What if there was something in this hand that would make you forget about this hand? Like, what do you mean? Like, there'd be something in this hand and you'd be focused on that. And you'd be like, what was in this hand? Oh, that's not important anymore because you'd be focused on this. You mean if there were like $400 in this hand? That's what this is. That's literally the... Look over there. Go ahead.
Exactly.
I know. Oh, it's such a shit show. It just cracks me up. But that was how they tried to duck that whole thing. It was just a joke. Let's see. Let's skip ahead a little bit here. So, Merrick Garland, of course, then after this, had to get asked about this. So Merrick Garland's the Attorney General for the United States right now. He should be a Supreme Court justice, but he's not been doing great as Attorney General either, in my opinion. But oh well. Anyway, this is him. He had to respond to this nonsense. And I just like the way he does this because it's such a stupid thing. There was really no point to any of this. And it's just a waste of time.
The Attorney General, neither of them on topic.
I'm surprised.
Most of us got a solicitation email this morning from the former President of the United States saying that the Justice Department had authorization to kill him during the Mar-a-Lago raid. First, can you give us some clarification on that particular point that he's making and whether or not deadly force is authorized in other interventions, including the search of Mr. Biden's residence and office? And the second question is...
Can I do one at a time? Okay. On that one, that allegation is false, and it is extremely dangerous. The document that is being referred to in the allegation is the Justice Department's standard policy limiting the use of force. As the FBI advises, it is part of the standard operations plan for searches, and in fact, it was even used in the consensual search of President Biden's home.
So I just wanted to...
Also this, can you explain why the false allegations like...
Well, I don't know what that was. So I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, I mean, they used that on Biden. They used it all the time. It's the standard search warrant. You don't really get creative with search warrants usually. They're pretty boilerplate. They're pretty basic.
This is not an exercise in creative writing.
No.
This is not, making new rules or legislation. This is just like, here's the form letter stamp,
Yeah, all you're really doing when you go into it is, like, I used to have the document saved, already typed out, and you'd go into it and you just like, okay, change the date, change the name of the person, change the address, change, and then, okay, what are we looking for? What's the circumstance? That's it. You change, it takes like a half hour. You change a dozen things, but otherwise it's all the same legal jargon.
It's like a lease on an apartment. Like, they're just basically standardized and you just plug in,
There's nothing you have to do that makes it that complicated. But I wanted to think so all that was really just to hide that Walt Nauta, all the damning evidence that Walt Nauta was working for Trump and was hiding documents for Trump. And so that didn't get dismissed. I'm sure Eileen Cannon wanted to, but she couldn't. But I also wanted, it was so funny about the Trump saying, Biden was trying to assassinate me because the FBI searched and they could use deadly force. Even though they searched when they knew I wasn't going to be there to make it convenient. So this is a really bad assassination attempt, if it is one. But
right, like, assassins are waiting until you're gone.
But we're still waiting to hear about the Supreme Court hearing his immunity case, which they've kind of blown off. Hopefully we'll get an answer to that here in June. We'll see what they do. I bet they kick the can down the road even further. But part of their argument for presidential immunity is that a president should be completely immune, for the most part. And here was one of the arguments they made about whether or not a president could or could not assassinate their political rivals.
Because it's such a poignant moment that Judge Florence Pan asked of this very court. She had a litany of things, including selling military secrets, selling pardons, and ending with this huge hypothetical. Listen to this.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes.
So the argument they made in the immunity case is if you're president, you can order the military or whoever to go kill your political rival. And the only way you could be legally charged with that is after you've been impeached, which means the House has to vote to impeach you, and then 2/3 of the Senate has to vote to remove you. Which never happened. Right. So Trump's saying, Biden's trying to kill me, on one hand, which riles up his supporters, and that makes it dangerous because then they're like, you never know if one of them starts to go, we need to kill Biden. Get them before they get us kind of thing, right? And that's why Merrick Garland was saying that was dangerous. On the other side of the coin, the other hand, Trump's saying, but I should be allowed to, when I'm president, kill whoever I want, whenever I feel like it, without any repercussions. So the president should be able to do that. So on one hand, he's saying the presidency, Biden should be able to kill him legally, and it should be okay. And on the other hand, he's saying Biden's trying to kill me, and that's wrong.
So we're back to the same old thing, Duncan. The Republican Party seemed to have this MO of, well, the rules are the rules intended to wait. Who's gonna have a problem now? Oh wait, no, the rules are set to be against those people, but not us. Right? I mean, we see it time and time again. I feel like every week we're actually talking about that in some way, shape, or form or another, you know?
Well, that's just how conservatives think. It's the law should protect me but not bind me, and then everybody else that I don't like, it should bind them and not protect them. Right? It's the whole George Orwell thing from Animal Farm. Some animals are more equal. Right?
Right. Do unto others as you would want done unto them, but not to you.
You're right.
Like, there's a little twisty thing that's happening there.
Yeah, Buddha and Jesus, you made it too simple. It's nuanced.
Right. What they really meant was
kill anybody you want, just not me. Oh, man.
Because some animals are more equal than others.
Right. Well, to give you an example of that, because you just brought in a great point, this whole argument
so
also...
let's just say...
Go ahead.
I'm better at segues than you are.
You're awesome at segues. Because that comes into this. So, the whole double speak, double think kind of thing that they're doing, where it applies to you, but it doesn't apply to me, right? The rules apply to you, but not to me, and I get to make the rules kind of concept. It's actually happening in the House, and we're going to go to Lawrence O'Donnell on this, and we're going to break this down, because this actually happened in the House this week, and I thought this was insane. It's just it's crazy. So,
on the floor of the House today, Jim McGovern gave the rules of the House a new test, an unprecedented test.
Republicans are skipping their real jobs to take day trips up to New York to try to undermine Donald Trump's criminal trial. No time to work with Democrats, but plenty of time to put on weird matching cult uniforms and stand behind President Trump with their...
So real quick, what he's talking about is with a bunch of members of the House and other senators and stuff went up to New York and ditched work. They ditched going to the House of Representatives doing their job, legislating, and they went to New York to support Trump in his trial. And they all wore matching suits dressed like Trump. It was really embarrassing. That's what he's talking about.
Bright red ties and like pathetic props. Maybe
What was that? What was that?
They should have done the hair.
They should have done the hair.
Just to make sure we all got what they were saying, and they should have gone to the tanning salon first.
No, it's just an applicant. It's just a spray on. You just wipe it on.
Oh, good. Even better.
Do that, yep. They should have totally done all that. We got the hair, the wig going. They're now referring to them as the Red Tie Brigade because they all wore that shitty... His suits look so cheap, too, man. He looks like he's wearing like a $200 suit. And they never fit him. So, anyway, we'll get back into this.
Want to distract from the fact that their candidate for president has been indicted more times than he's been elected. Maybe they don't want to talk about the fact that the leader of their party is on trial for covering up hush money payments to a porn star for political gain, not to mention 3 other criminal felony prosecutions he's facing. Now, I understand why my Republican friends want to distract from Donald Trump. They don't want to talk about how Trump had the worst jobs record since the Great Depression, how he sold out our allies and empowered our adversaries. So they bring silly things like this to the floor to deflect blame and distract from the fact that they have no real vision, just division, and no real plans to make life better for the American people. And with that, I reserve my time.
All right, so I wanted to hear that because that's a good speech. He's got a good point. He's pointing out exactly what you were pointing out, Lacey, the hypocrisy of it all. Now, he's pointing out that they're hypocritical. They want to say one thing, do another. And they expect the rest of us to do what they say and not what they do. That's what he's pointing out. Watch. Now they're going to actually do what he just said they're doing. And they're not going to get the irony at all.
The chair would like to remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities towards presumed nominees for the office of the president. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Massachusetts isn't the only word that Jerry Lee Carl Jr. of Mobile, Alabama cannot pronounce. Jerry Lee Carl, who has no idea what he's doing up there at the podium and has to read every word he says, was elected to the House of Representatives in 2020 and was defeated earlier this year in a Republican primary by a fellow Republican congressman from Alabama who was redistricted out of a district and decided to take Jerry Lee Carl's seat away from him. And so these are Jerry Lee Carl's final days in the House of Representatives. It is very unlikely he will say anything again in the House to come to our attention. But he had the misfortune yesterday of being the junior member assigned to the thankless task of mechanically presiding over the House when Congressman Jim McGovern presented him with a challenge that Jerry Lee Carl simply could not comprehend.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a few moments ago, I was admonished for stating the simple fact that the former president was indicted by a grand jury and is on trial in a court of law. That's not my opinion. It's just the truth. So I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, has the chair determined it's unparliamentary to state a fact?
The chair is not in a position to determine the veracity of remarks made on the floor. That members must avoid personalities.
Yeah, well, that's unbelievable. Last week during debate, a Republican member of this House said, and I quote, "Watch the former president of the United States being hauled into court day after day with a sham trial," end quote. He wasn't admonished. I just referenced the same trial, and I was. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask a further parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it correct that members of Congress can mention the trial of the presumptive nominee for president, call it a sham, and question the integrity of the judge, but a reference to the mere existence of that same trial without any characterization that's out of order?
The chair will not issue an advisory opinion.
Well, one last parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is this restriction originally founded, at least in part, on the principle in Jefferson's manual that, quote, in Parliament, to speak irreverently or seditiously against the king is against order, end quote? Is that what this is about? I have Jefferson's manual here.
Members must avoid personalities in debates. The chair will direct members to Rule 17 in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual.
Yeah. So it is in fact based on Jefferson's manual. Mr. Speaker.
I mean, we can stop there, but he doesn't get it. He honestly doesn't get. I mean, granted, that guy's stupid and he has to read everything and he has to go to the assistant to tell him what to say, but he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. When my side does it, it's fine. When my side can mention the trial and call it a sham, that's fine. When you mention there's a trial, you can't do that. Then what they try to do is strike his records. They had the clerk go out and try to figure out what to strike from his statement. He made a further statement after that. And so she went back. It took her an hour, and then she came back and goes, "Is this what you want me to strike?" And so she went through it and read it, and it's just him stating the truth. He didn't say anything negative about Trump or his character or anything. He just said the guy's indicted. The guy's an adjudicated rapist. All these things are facts. I mean, you can't say something that's true, you know? I mean, it's just amazing to me. So, yeah, they didn't get it. That's the point. Is he just this whole thing about this? There's a hypocrisy going on here where you guys can do it, but you expect us to live to a higher level, right? And then what do? Well, you shouldn't have said that at all. We can say it, but you can't say it. That's why he's like, this is astounding. You don't get it. They don't even see it. That's amazing. It just cracks me up. I think he did a great job, though. He basically humiliated the guy in front of everybody. And then it was on national television. So he had that coming. Oh,
wow,
man.
just wow.
I know, it's astounding stuff. Well, you want to take a quick break? We'll come back?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, cool. Okay, so we're back. So that was all the Republican shenanigans going on. So I want to do this anymore since we're getting to the election. What's Biden up to? What's the Democrats up to? Well, right now things are going pretty good. The economy is doing really well, but the problem is people don't see that. And so I have a clip here from Morning Joe. Not always my favorite show, but they do some good stuff occasionally. But yeah, they're going to talk a little bit about this, where it's the perception of what the economy is doing versus what the economy is actually doing, right? And they're going to jump into why that's kind of an issue.
So despite some strong economic numbers, new polling finds most Americans believe the country is in a recession. It is not. In the latest Harris poll conducted for The Guardian, 56% of adults expressed the belief that we are in a recession. That includes 67% of Republicans, 49% of Democrats, and 53% of independents. And although inflation has fallen sharply over the past year, 72% of adults still think that is increasing. Joining us now, former Treasury official, Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner, to help us
I've got a couple things about that. He's going to go into this a little bit. So part of that is it's still the recovery from the pandemic. I don't think things have gotten completely back to where they were, and they're never going to. It's going to be different going forward. And you've got a lot of people that moved out of urban areas during the pandemic into more suburb kind of areas. You go back historically through pandemics, this is what happens. I mean, people don't want to congregate around a lot of other people when there's a pandemic, because that's how you most likely to get the pandemic and die, right? So people tend to spread out. And so that changes the topography, it changes markets, it changes business. So I can see where a lot of people there's a lot of uncertainty and people are confused. Even though the markets are doing really well, our economy's recovery has been better than every other developed country's. GDP is up, everything's going well, and inflation has gone down significantly. I know the confusion with inflation, and I'm sure you've seen this lots of times, where it's better than it was. It was 9% 2 years ago, right? And now it's down to 3 point whatever, 4, whatever it is. Prices are still going up, and so people think, oh, inflation is still going up, even though they don't realize, no, it's actually gone down. Prices always go up. It's just the rate at which they go up. So they don't understand the difference between the rate and the fact they think prices are going up, so inflation's up. Well, no, prices are never going to stay flat. It's just never going to happen. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you've seen that before, right? Or is that just me?
Right. No, you're right on.
Yeah.
I agree.
People just get confused by the concept, I think. So, probably a bad...
Well, I also think... I think some of it has to do with inflation as well, like people's perception of inflation. They're translating it over into recession as well, you know.
Right.
Not necessarily being able to separate these ideas, you know.
Right, or I can't really afford as much as I thought I should, or whatnot, or I could before, or whatnot. Even though that's not really a huge issue right now, especially since wage growth is starting to go up significantly for the first time in 20 years. So the problem is yeah, it'll catch up. It's just going to take another several years. So I think that's the only issue. But let's go look at the charts with Ratner. Ratner's charts. What's Ratner doing?
Great perception from the facts of this economy. Steve, good morning. So we can start with that. idea of the United States being in a recession right now, which it plainly is not. We can talk about why so many Americans believe that, but let's talk first in your chart about where we really are.
Yeah, Willie, it's really quite an, an extraordinary poll. We've seen polls before that show Americans having a more negative view on the economy. I've never seen one quite like this. These are the numbers you mentioned in your lead-in, that roughly more than half of Americans think we're in a recession. It is divided somewhat by party. More Republicans, 67%, feel it than Democrats, but even Democrats, 49% feel it. We've seen this kind of divergence before. And interestingly enough, it flips around with every election, not surprisingly. But here's the reality. The reality is the economy has basically been growing since COVID, except for a very small downturn here. Under Joe Biden, it's grown by 2.8% a year, which is actually slightly faster than it was growing under Trump, even before COVID hit. And so you can see every quarter we've had reasonably strong economic growth. So why people feel this is really quite a mystery.
So, Steve, what about, I mean, this other sort of low unemployment, surging?
We can talk about, we'll get more into why people feel that. And once again, I think a lot of it's the change. And it's spread out. And there are still a lot of areas in the country that are under distress. And they haven't fully recovered from the pandemic. And that's simply because the markets have changed so much. And work has changed so much. I mean, so much more work is remote now.
Right.
I mean, prior to the pandemic, I did everything in person. I almost never did a virtual meeting. Now, probably more than half of all my meetings are virtual.
You know, to a certain degree, I think people appreciate that because it was sort of like, why everyone grinding their gears, having to run around like chickens with their heads cut off for things that don't require it. Certainly some things do require in-person meetings, but many things do not.
Yeah, but you got to remember too that those are for those sort of office kinds of jobs. A lot of people, the vast majority of Americans work, the vast majority, over half, work sort of labor jobs, service industry. They work at a factory or something like that. Most people don't have office jobs where you can do a lot of that from home or virtually from the office. They're not doing a lot of meetings. It's a lot of actual physical work. And so I can see for them where this is really stressful because it's changed how we do demand and how everything works. Just sort of a historical example, when the Black Plague happened, I mean, the cities were pretty devastated because people all left the cities that could and went out to the countryside where they could be away from people so they wouldn't die of the plague. And, that changed how the cities functioned. And so when the plague went away, finally, it took years for the cities to recover again and get back to the growth they were at before because nobody was there. And then you have a lot of these rural communities where it's or urban communities or suburban sort of communities where all these people who are in the cities working are now invading and they're taking jobs. And they're used to a different sort of competition where there's a lot more people. And so it's frustrating when you're used to a limited sort of pool of competition and now that pool has grown pretty drastically because of this event. And I think it changes how they think about work and how they think about their economy and how much money they make. And like you said, I mean, inflation was big and it's gone down and it's getting better, but it still was 9% for a while. And those prices haven't come down necessarily. And they're not gonna. They're just not gonna go up as fast anymore. So they still feel it. I can see that. I mean, it makes sense to me why people would see that. Even though things are improving, it's not entirely real for them yet. And that's part of the problem. And there are ways to solve that. A lot of it would have to do with a better tax code for middle and lower income people. It'd have to do with more tax credits, things like that. But definitely more putting in more infrastructure and stuff. I thought the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden did was a brilliant idea. Let's just dump a ton of money into infrastructure. We need it anyway. It's going to provide a lot of jobs. and a lot of money to the local communities, which it did. I mean, I know where I'm living, they're doing a ton of construction now because they got a ton of money from the feds to do it. So it's all good stuff. I just think it's interesting, and it's interesting to look at coming into the election, that there are people that literally think we're in a recession, when in fact right now we're in what's called a Goldilocks economy, which means things are almost perfect. They're not too hot, they're not too cold. Markets are breaking records, it seems like almost every other day. GDP's up. In fact, they did the sales reports and stuff, the earnings reports were all really good for the most part for most companies. They were way up. I mean, it's a solid economy. It's a gold mine right now, and I just don't think everybody gets to participate, and I think that's the problem. Plus, I think if we had a better tax code and it was more equal, that people would feel like they're getting a more equal share, and they would feel less like they're getting screwed and they're in a recession. Probably because it's not trickling down.
It's not trickling down. I feel like the other thing, okay, so the things that are happening in people's minds that probably make them feel this way, you know, we already mentioned people's perceptions of inflation, right? And how they're feeling about that. But there's also people's perception of the rates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rates are different than they have been for a very long time. We had them at absolute rock bottom levels for a very long time in terms of people borrowing money, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
now, comparatively, where they're up to what one might argue are normal levels before, you know, the big crash of 08, 09 in that era.
Right.
You know, we haven't seen those theoretical normal levels in how long?
Since
you
the
know?
90s.
Right. So people are looking at that, and anybody trying to, you know, wanting to buy an auto loan or get an auto loan to buy a vehicle, people wanting to purchase houses or whatever, their buying power has changed in this huge way, and they just see the Fed screwing with their rates in a way that isn't really good for them doing that.
Right.
You know, and they feel like inflation is getting them. They feel like they can't, their purchasing power is less.
Mm-hmm.
So when they combine all of these things, their brain has decided that's recession, you know, which recession has a technical meaning, and that's not what it is.
No, and recession is negative growth for 2 quarters in a row or more.
2 quarters in a row.
Yeah, that's usually the standard. But you're right, though. I mean, that's part of it too. Is the Fed, keeping the rates kind of artificially high. That's, like you said, that was a big jump because they were near zero from 2009 all the way up to what, 2020, 21, 22.
Right.
They were almost zero. I mean, you could get a car loan for like less than 3%.
Right. I mean, most people I know, many of my very close personal friends purchased homes during that era in time, and I think the highest interest rate among that circle is about 4%, you know.
Nice.
And right now that's probably the highest one is like 4, maybe slightly above 4. It was like the highest rate for that point, you know. And I personally, I'm having to sort of rethink my own strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty well versed and pretty well educated in all of this, and I'm having to rethink my strategy because of the rates behaving in this completely different way. So I don't really blame people for their idea, but they're falsely labeling it because it's
Absolutely
not negative growth for 2 quarters, which is basically, you know, your sort of dictionary definition of what a recession is. They're
Right.
just feeling like they don't know what to do with these variables that have changed drastically on them.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. The conditions have changed to the point where it's like you don't, from your perspective, your individual perspective, it feels like you can't do things you could have done 5 years ago. And so you feel like there's a squeeze on you, when in fact, I mean, there kind of is in the sense of the rates and stuff, but in the sense the economy's doing really well, but you don't have the same sort of buying power you did before. And like you said, I had a client recently with that. He's like, well, I'm thinking about getting a new house. And I'm like, man, if you get rid of that mortgage, his mortgage was like 3.8 something %. He got it at the bottom. And I'm sitting there like, look at what the rates are now. And he went out and he looked at it and they're like, it was like 8. It was like 7.5 or 8%. I mean, he's paying like 2.5 times more in interest. And then he looked at what he'd be paying every month and he was like, well, forget that. I'm like, yeah, you might as well just ride it out until the rates come back down. I mean, because it's going to bleed you to have to pay that interest every month.
Right. I mean, especially if he's looking to like sell and then repurchase as opposed to like buying another thing or, you know, and people that have been looking at wanting to use their cash to pay down a debt, but then want to do something else. If that doing something else is some version of a purchase, they're needing to pull back and go, well, let me math all of this out, you know?
Well, SBA loans are ridiculous now. I can tell you, if you want to start a small business.
I bet.
Oh my God, they're terrible. But yeah, but I think that's what's going on. There's just a confusion about that. We'll get into a little bit more of that later. But I wanted to move on to some other clips going forward. So we were making fun of Tim Scott earlier. And the VP race, we made fun of Marco Rubio already. We're trying to cover as many of them as we can. It's like the Miss America pageant for Trump for who he's going to pick for VP. So the one person we knew he wasn't going to pick is Nikki Haley, because she ran against him. She talked all this shit about him, and in fact, even recently she stepped out of the race 2 months ago. She dropped out, but she's still been getting like 20% of the vote in the primaries. Because people are voting against Trump, so they'll vote for Nikki, even though she's not in the race. So the question was, will Nikki endorse Trump? Will she bend over and kiss the ring? Will she do it? Well, of course she will. She has no scruples. She has no morals. Nikki Haley's an awful human being. And here's Luke Beasley to show you just what happened.
Rally. And so it's really hard to gauge political support based on rally attendance. But there is a photo that I'll show you of the real crowd size at this event.
Sorry, I got the wrong one there, didn't I? Hang on, everybody. I'll have to redo this. I'll cut that, sorry. All right, so here's a clip, sorry, of Anderson Cooper showing you Nikki Haley.
4 months ago. In her first public speech since leaving the Republican presidential primary race more than 2 months ago, today, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley finally announced who she will be supporting in the election.
Drum roll. Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump. I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me.
Okay, first off, I don't think a lot of them support Nikki. My bet is most of them are voting because they want to vote against Trump, and she's the only other person they can think of. Because she was the one who hung in there the longest. Right? So they wanted to give her a big portion of the vote. I don't think a lot of that was we love Nikki so much. But this is an interesting move because she's not going to get VP. She's not going to be on his cabinet. And she's made a move here to suck up to his base. That's why she's saying this. That's why she's endorsing him now. She's bent over, gotten down, prostrated herself, kissed the ring, you know, doing the whole deal. She's trying to, I still think he's bad, but he's not as bad as Biden, da-da-da, right? But here's what she's done that's really, I think, interesting, is even though there wasn't a strong group of people behind her, because she's always been a wishy-washy loser who lies about everything. Even though it wasn't a strong support, she did gain a pretty significant support from the Republican Party, and she just threw all those people under the bus to suck up to Trump's base. It's an interesting political move. I don't think it's going to pan out for her. I think she just She basically just electrocuted herself. She stuck the paperclip into the socket on purpose.
Well, I gotta say, it kind of cracked me up because, like, the way that she, went for him, which I appreciated, the way that she went for him, then to turn around and endorse. I mean, people go for each other a bit and then turn around and endorse, but she really kind of went for him in a, I don't know, like a very character, driven sort of way. So if you're kind of calling somebody out in the ways that she did, then turning around and endorsing them is sort of tricky how to do it. So she kind of had to do it as like, well, this guy's a bigger disaster. It's kind of like the only move she had that made any sense. And even then it's a little,
It's not even a good move. It's just because it's not true. Also, you're sitting there saying Biden's a bigger disaster for the economy. You're talking about Trump, who the economy slowed under after Obama. Then we went to the pandemic, and he didn't do anything about the pandemic, and he lost more jobs than he created. He's the second president in history to do that, him and Herbert Hoover. Right? The economy was in the tank. This is that whole thing when they get up there. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Let's see, 4 years ago was 2020. Yeah, it was a pandemic. We were all locked in our homes hoping we wouldn't die. And we had Trump on stage telling us to inject bleach and take horse dewormer and not doing anything. And then his followers and him all like, well, we're against wearing the masks. It's against our civil liberties. They're forcing us to get vaccinated. No, they're not. Well, I got fired for that's not being forced. That's, if you want to work here, you got to be vaccinated or you got to be tested every day. You're not coming into my business infecting me or my employees or my customers because you're an a-hole. I don't have to give you that job. That's my right as an employer. I don't have to pay you. Right. So, I just think it's funny. But yeah, she ripped into him a lot during that. So she's not going to be she's not on his good side in any way. And he can't ever forgive her. He's got to always throw her under the bus. Plus she's she's an Indian woman. So we know Trump's a racist and he doesn't like women. So she's never going to get anywhere.
Unless he thinks he's going to sleep with them.
Yeah, even that, I don't think he'd do it. I'm guessing there's not a lot, at least from what I've seen, there's not a lot of diversity in Trump's sexual history background. It's pretty much all white women. He's got pretty much the MO of your standard rapist. He's got his particular type. Just saying. So, yeah, well, we're talking about the sexual assault stuff, and his case. So the jury, once again, we mentioned before, was deliberating. They'll come back and they'll make a decision on whether or not to convict Trump. Odds are they will convict. I think the best that Trump can hope for is a hung jury, in which case they'll just retry the case at some point. But then there's the question of, okay, if he's convicted, which seems likely at this point, what's the likely sentence going to be? What's going to happen? Will he go to jail? Will he not? Here's a guy who's going to do an analysis. He's with the Young Turks, and I'm going to disagree with him, but I think he does a decent analysis here. I think he makes a couple mistakes, but we'll watch him. But he's going to make his sort of assessment. What do you think?
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster. Welcome back to Rebel HQ, and thanks for joining us. Some of the questions I'm getting the most these days from family and friends related to my work is, will Donald Trump be convicted in his New York hush money trial? If he is convicted, will he be sent to prison? And third, what does this mean for the November election with Joe Biden? Well, based on my decades of experience covering trials, everything that I've read in terms of transcripts and some reporting on the Trump case specifically, I think I'm on pretty solid ground with the following. Donald Trump, in my view, will be convicted on at least some of the 34 felony charges that he is facing. He will not be sent to jail, even though he has convictions out of this case. And he will lose the 2024 election to Joe Biden, and Donald Trump not going to jail will actually help cement Biden's victory. So a lot to unpack here, and let's get into it. And let's start, of course, with the criminal trial. Donald Trump is facing 34 Class E felony charges. This is the lowest level of felony charges in New York State. And this, of course, stems from alleged falsification of business records involving the payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels, $130,000 that was made through Michael Cohen. And the payments were made in 2016, just before the election, after the Access Hollywood tape came out.
So I want to get into this. He's getting into the trial a bit and what the case is. So here's the deal. So the felonies, they are Class E, so it's the lowest you can get in New York. The lowest level felony. Now, standard with the felony usually is some sort of jail or prison time for a felony. Almost always. Now, I was curious about this. Now, in this sort of particular case, he could get probation, like whatever it is, 5 years, which I think would be funny because, and I think it'd be stupid on the judge's part, because the bottom line is, do you really think Trump's going to comply with probation? Especially, and here's the other deal, and he makes this point later in this, but he's like, well, he's a first-time offender. Well, yeah, yes and no. Yes, this would be his first felony offense, but he just got convicted 10 times for contempt of court by the same judge in the same case. So the judge has got to factor in, okay, is the defendant remorseful? Or will they be remorseful? Well, no. Obviously not. Right? What are the odds they're going to repeat again? Well, in Trump's case, he's been doing this his whole life, so yeah, he's going to repeat again. And 3, and this is probably the big one, is what's the severity of the crime? And I think that's what this is going to hinge on. Is how does Merchan, the judge, view the severity of the crime? Because the business falsification isn't the big crime. The crime, it's the underlying crime. Is he viewing it as, well, it's election interference? If it's election interference, that's a pretty serious crime. That's up there with treason and sedition in this country. Right? Trying to overthrow the will of the people, which is the whole point of this country. Right? That would be a serious crime. I would sit there and say, yeah, he'd probably give him the minimum prison sentence, which would be whatever, a year and a third. I think it's like 16 months or something in New York. That would be what I would think a standard one is. It might be that he doesn't view it that way. He views it in a different way. He views it, oh, it's for some other crime or some minor thing, or it's not that serious, right? He could go that way and just say, well, I'm going to give him probation or something like that, or house arrest or something. He could do that. But then it kind of undermines the contempt charges, where he didn't put him in jail for that. And he could have put him in jail for 300 days, for almost a year. So, I don't know. I think also if you don't give him any jail time at this point, even if it's just 10 days or something, I think you undercut the whole point of the court and the punishment.
Right.
And you've basically taken the teeth out of the court system. And honestly, I think it'll be a big black mark on his record if he doesn't do something severe to make a point here. Because they're felonies. Even though, they're e-felonies, sure, but they're still felonies. There needs to be some sort of punishment. And, it'd be funny if they did. He could say, okay, you have to do 100 hours of community service. Right? With whatever I assign you. You can't pick it. So Trump could be spearing trash on the freeway in a jumpsuit. Wouldn't that be fucking awesome?
I don't even have a car, but I would find somebody with a car to drive me down that highway so I could see it.
Oh yeah. But yeah, we could try to make him do that.
If this happens, I'll pay somebody good money to drive me down that highway just to be able to see that with my eyeballs.
Yeah. They could give him that option. Yeah, probation and, 200 hours of community service or whatever he's going to do. Or you can do 20 days jail. We'll see. Can
you imagine him in his soup kitchens, scooping your soup or something?
I can't imagine him doing any labor ever. I think the guy's incapable of it. But I want to look at, because people were saying a lot of people get probation for this. And I did look this up, and that's true. But a lot of the times they get probation because the underlying crime is something minor. Right? But then I pulled up this, this guy, Stephen Bilkis, he's a lawyer in New York. I'm just going to use his webpage for an example, everybody, but he cites a couple cases. I'm not advertising for Stephen Bilkis, I don't know anything about it. But he's talking about this. So this is the New York Penal Law 170.10 for the statute. Falsifying business records in the first degree. So he's talking about this same charge, and he gives examples. So People versus Mark Rodriguez. In this case, the defendant, Mark Rodriguez, was the manager of a rental car company. He was charged with falsifying business records in the first degree for altering rental agreements to reflect that optional insurance had been declined by by customers when in fact the insurance had been added without the customer's knowledge or consent. The prosecution argued Rodriguez did this in order to increase the profits of the company. So he stole, right? So Rodriguez was found guilty and sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 1 to 3 years. So he was imprisoned for over a year for stealing from customers, right? And this one, Jane Chen, in this case, the defendant, Jane Chen, was the CFO of a large corporation. She was accused of falsifying business records in the first degree, a Class C felony in New York, same thing Trump is. The prosecution alleged that Chen altered financial records of the company to reflect false revenue numbers in order to mislead investors and shareholders about the financial health of the company and boost its stock price. So it's stock manipulation. I don't know how serious of a crime that is. I mean, it's still fraud. Don't get me wrong, it's still a serious crime. But I don't know that either of those is on the tier of election interference. Those seem pretty minor in comparison to trying to manipulate the election to get the presidency.
Right. The first one, 1 to 3 years. The second one is 2 to 4 years.
Yep. So those are examples. The question is how does Marchand interpret this? And does he have the fortitude to stick up and say, look, if this were anybody else, what would I give them? Because in all honesty, if it were anybody else, he'd probably give him a year to 2 years. Now, Trump will appeal it, and the question is, does the appeals court allow him to stay out of custody awaiting the appeal, or do they make him go in custody awaiting the appeal? And that'll be a whole nother issue that's kind of out of Michonne's hands. But honestly, I'd be disappointed if he didn't do something severe, like serious, like, no, we're going to have to do some jail time. Even if it's just, I'm going to do 10 days, I'm going to do 2 or 5 years probation, and you're going to have to do some community service. And Trump will throw a fit about that, but that is a slap on the wrist, what I just proposed.
Well, but you see, he's too good to get slapped on his wrist.
Right. If it were me and I were the judge, I would like to think that I'd at least have the courage and the and the fairness to sit there and go, you know what? If this were any other business person off the street, they'd be doing a year, so you're going to get that. Welcome to America. Justice is blind.
Right.
Doesn't matter who you are. Either the law applies to everybody or it doesn't apply at all. So, I don't know.
Wait, is that Republican law?
No. No, the Republican law is it only applies to certain people.
Right.
Oh, man. So, we'll see. He might be looking at that. I would say this. I would bet money the jury finishes deliberation probably either tomorrow or Monday, and they render a verdict. I bet my money's on they're going to find him guilty. Then the big question is going to be, how far does the judge willing to go in the name of justice? And we'll see. This guy seems, so far, from what I've heard about him and from what I've seen of him, he seems like a pretty even-handed stand-up guy. So we'll see. I mean, it's always tough. It's always, because he's going to get backlash for whatever punishment he gets him. And the worse it is, the bigger the backlash. The question is, does he have the the conviction to stand up, right? We'll see. So, oh yeah, and Trump supporters, if you guys are watching this, yeah, just email me. Yeah, tell me what an idiot I am, or comment all you want.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yep, absolutely, do that too. You can hate us more that way.
Ring that little bell.
So, we did the we did hit Nikki Haley and whatnot. So I got to go back. So Tim Scott, who also trying to be Trump's VP. So Tim Scott ran for president against Trump, lost, got endorsed by everybody else, but or Trump got endorsed and he basically lost. He actually got engaged during the primary, probably because most people the Republicans won't vote for a single guy for president. So I think he intentionally got engaged just so he could run for president. Lucky lady. Anyway, Tim Scott, total suck up to the president. I want to show you this. This is one of the famous clips. One of the many, but this is probably the worst one. Tim Scott sucking up to Trump right after Trump insults him. It's great.
Then we do go to South Carolina, where we've done really well, where I've done well. We have a great governor and lieutenant governor and great everything, because almost every one of them have endorsed me. 2 great senators, which is hard. I mean, did you ever think that she actually appointed you, Tim? And think of it, appointed, and you're the senator of his state, and she endorsed me. You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's why he's a great politician.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Sorry.
Did he have to wash his own mouth out with soap after he said that?
No, he's just got no balls, man. The guy has no scruples.
I mean,
it's just like
he kisses his mom with those lips. I don't know.
We've done this now. Marco Rubio sucking up. Nikki Haley sucking up. Tim Scott sucking up. I'm losing track now because we've done more of them. I know, but I'm like, there's they all have to get down there and kiss the ring and suck up to their orange god king. I kind of think we should just get a graphics package in there and just say we'll just call this segment "Slapping Trump's Dick Out of Some Republican's Mouth." That's pretty much all we can do. Tim Scott, after sucking up to Trump and doing all, and he's still been sucking up. He's off the list now. Go ahead.
Again, you know what? Melania's thrilled because, it gets her off the hook.
Absolutely. So Tim Scott's off the list, and Trump didn't mention him recently in his VP picks. I also don't think Trump, just historically racist guy. When he was on The Apprentice, I mean, everybody there said he used the N-word all the time. Right? When he's off camera. Oh yeah.
Really?
Extremely racist.
Oh, boy.
Remember, he was him and his father were in trouble for basically trying to buy up these tenancies and push all the black people out because they didn't want to rent to black people. I mean, they were sued for that, and they lost. I think they settled. Anyway, so Tim Scott, real quick, sucking up to Trump for all that. Tim Scott just got in some serious trouble with Trump and some other stuff. And here's the damage report, and he's going to show you this. This is hilarious, you guys.
While Ben Carson was on the list and some of the other senators that he's talked about before, no Byron Donalds, and more importantly, no Tim Scott. And interestingly, Tim Scott has been in the news recently. You might have seen this. He has an ad to raise money for Donald Trump, to help save Donald Trump, get him elected. But there was a bit of a problem with it. When you went to actually donate, you weren't necessarily giving to what you thought you were. So he tweeted, "It's Tim Scott," which, yeah, it's your Twitter account and there's a video of you. We know it's you, Tim. Anyway, he says, "Can you chip in $5, $10, or $25 to President Trump's campaign before his critical end-of-month fundraising deadline? Thank you." But as I alluded to, when you go and do that, there's an automatic split that happens that gives Donald Trump 5% of what you give. and gives Tim Scott 95%. Now, you could change that, obviously. You give 100% to Tim Scott, you give 100% to Donald Trump if you want. But notably, he could have easily put a link to Trump's fundraising there. He didn't. He did the one that benefits him almost entirely. Now, look, obviously.
I love you, Donald. Now let me rip off your supporters by saying I'm raising money for you when I'm not. So guess who's not on the short list for VP anymore? For Trump. Tim Scott. Oh my God. They're all such horrible people. Honestly, I mean, we've had that joke how many times where it's like, being a conservative and a Republican, it's like Highlander rules. There can be only one. They're always screwing each other over at every turn. It's like we said, it's like Game of Thrones for idiots over there. I mean, it's amazing. And Tim Scott, I mean, this is so obvious. Like, he wasn't going to get caught. You're posting it on, what was it, X, and you're sending emails out. And how did he think he was going to get by with this without getting caught? Without the RNC or Trump's campaign finding out? I don't know, man. You have anything to add to that, or just?
No, I'm just. Listen, yeah. I wish I could say you were wrong.
Lacey's like, I'm just absorbing all this scumbaggery.
You know what? Do you know what I was actually thinking about? I'm going to throw myself under the bus. I was thinking about how much I just suddenly felt gross and wanted to take a shower.
Oh, God. Well, don't.
I was like, all this scummery's like, I need to like wash that Republican right out of my hair.
Well, I hope you have some.
All of this, like.
Oh, well, then you're going to hate this next segment because it gets worse. I hope you have some.
I already feel gross. I feel very dirty. Okay.
I have some lava soap. So it's also the damage report. I wanted to stay with him because he covered this the same episode. But so at the Cannes Film Festival was recently, and they had a biopic about Donald Trump, about him in the 80s and 90s and all his failed businesses and what a screw up he was, right? You know, and he's sucking up to his father and pretending to be his own publicist and all that stuff. Well, the biopic came out at Cannes, and it's, you know, it's like a, you know, it's a movie, biopic movie kind of thing, right? And there was one scene that was depicted in there that Trump and his campaign were not happy about. And he's gonna cover this real quick because it's bad.
There's a new video biography of Donald Trump that received an 8-minute-long standing ovation at Cannes, I believe. His team, not as happy as the audience was, though. And when you find out the issue they have with it, I think you'll understand why Donald Trump is so utterly miffed. So late in the movie, a scene depicting Trump's alleged rape of his first wife, Ivana, drew gasps. He is seen throwing Ivana, played by the amazing Maria Bakalova, violently to the ground and having non-consensual sex with her. Quote, "Did I find your G-spot?" he asks in the film, because that's all stuff that was alleged against him. And so when you're doing a biography, that's going to be in it, theoretically. You can see here a screenshot from it. You have Sebastian Stan playing Donald Trump, and he, I think, does a pretty good Trump. He mimics his appearance pretty well there, except that he also is attractive. So that's going to throw people off. And Jeremy Strong from Succession there is Roy Cohn. So this movie is called The Apprentice, and it tells basically of 1970s and 80s Donald Trump and him, you know, rising to become, you know, a self-made, born into it billionaire. And so they're saying they're going to sue now. The Trump campaign is going to sue the filmmakers. But bear in mind, like, they're just referencing something that Ivana Trump did say. It was in a 1989 divorce deposition. So apparently after a painful scalp reduction surgery to remove a bald spot, Donald Trump confronted his then wife, who had previously used the same plastic surgeon, quote, "Your effing doctor has ruined me." What followed was a violent assault, according to Lost Tycoon. That's I think that was a book that summarized some of this. Donald held back Ivana's arms and began to pull out fistfuls of hair from her scalp as if to mirror the pain he felt from his own operation. He tore off her.
Well, anyway, so it's gross. Right, the whole thing is gross. We're going to have to pause for 1 second, and then we'll come back to finish this up. We got breaking news. Trump was just convicted on all 34 counts.
Shut the front door.
No, I'm going to see if I can find an article about this.
Oh, 34. Holy crap. You know what? I'm not going to lie. I was feeling like the odds were kind of strong that they might split that whole thing off to sort of lighten things.
Nope. Here we go.
Wow.
I got it right here. Trump guilty. Jury convicts. Wow, they came back early. I thought this was going to be like Monday. Trump guilty. Jury convicts former president. Oh, I don't want all that. Of all counts in historic hush money trial, the conviction, which legal experts say is unlikely to lead to jail time, and we'll see, does not disqualify Trump from running for president. An appeal is likely. Okay. The jury serving in Donald Trump's hush money trial returned a guilty verdict Thursday. God, that was a quick deliberation. It was like less than 2 days. Against the former president, leaving an indelible blot on American history and scrambling the dynamic in the 2024 presidential election for the presumed Republican nominee. After roughly 9 hours of deliberation, the jurors found Trump. 9 hours was all it took? Jesus Christ.
Oh, wow.
That's all it took was 9. I would have thought at least like 15 or 16. Guilty.
Well, because they had to be unanimous, you know, like that having to be unanimous, that's got to take a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, typically, if it's a guilty plea, it's usually pretty quick, but considering all the ins and outs of this case, I figured they'd want to hear a lot of evidence and to go over. But yeah.
Right.
They found him guilty in all 34 counts.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. So here we go. So we'll report on that more later. I'll probably cover it later this week. But yeah, let's see what they got.
Oh, man.
Let's see. Judge has set Donald Trump's sentencing for July 11th.
Okay.
So he did not wait. Did not wait.
I love that so much that he didn't wait.
He's not dicking around. So that tells you that he's prepared to put the smack down here. Man, that's crazy. Well, I called it. I told you he was probably going to be convicted at the beginning of this episode, and he was. I didn't think it would happen while we were filming.
No. I thought that we were going to have to wait, honestly, till tomorrow, possibly Monday. I didn't think that it was going to go quickly, you know?
I thought it was going to be Monday, too. But crazy stuff. Well, I wanted to get into this, so I'm going to clip back to what we were talking about, the film that came out about him where they depicted the rape of Ivana, which was in her book, in her biography. And so how they depict it in the film is exactly how it happened. But I thought, since we're talking about Trump, why don't we do a little go back through history, and we'll talk about some of his past sexual assault accusations and confirmed ones, right? So, 1989 was the one where he assaulted and raped Ivana Trump while they were married. And yes, you can. I know the Trumpers. You can't rape your wife. Yeah, you can. You can rape your spouse. You can always say no to sex.
You can rape anyone that is saying no to you.
You can rape an animal. Yeah. If they can't consent, it's rape. Or if they don't consent, it's rape. He also got accused. Jill Harth accused him in '92, and he sued him, and he settled that out of court. 1994, Jane Doe, we don't know her actual name, was a lawsuit filed in California in April 2016 from a 1994 incident, accused Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, the big child trafficker, right, forcibly raping 3 12 and 13-year-old girls at underage sex parties at Epstein's Manhattan residence in 1994. The girl dropped the case after getting death threats from Trump supporters in 2016. E. Jean Carroll, who we know he raped because jury adjudicated him as a rapist. 96, let's see, Summer Zeveros, 2007, was a contestant on The Apprentice. He sexually assaulted her. Alva Johnson, 2016. And there's like 28 more. I'm just going through the big ones. Other allegations, Jessica Leeds, 1980, Kristen Anderson, Lisa Boyd. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This guy has a long history of sexual assault and being accused of it. And you go, oh, well, it's falsely accused. No, he freaking did it. So that's who you're voting for. The now convicted felon.
Rolling through that list, as you go scrolling through that list, like you were scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. God, I really do have to take a shower when we're done filming.
This is so gross. And
it's all very gross.
And a convicted felon, and the guy who fucked up the pandemic, and. I mean, this is why I say when people say, well, not all Republicans are bad. If you're voting for Trump or you're voting for Republicans, yeah, you are, because you're voting for this shit. You support this shit. So you either are okay with it or want it, or you're okay with dealing with it.
At minimum, you're saying it's okay and it doesn't matter.
Right.
That it's a non-issue. And if you're saying it's a non-issue, that's an issue.
No. So all the sexual assault stuff, well, just to give you a little scrubbing bubbles here, a little soap. E. Jean Carroll, who won her first defamation case against Trump for $5 million. He defamed her again after that. Actually, the same day she won. And then later, she sued him again. Jury came back and gave her whatever it was, $88 million. Right? He was kind of quiet about it, but he's done it again recently, a couple more times, and now this is happening, and here's Ben my solace on the Midas Touch.
So it looks like E. Jean Carroll is getting ready to file another defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump, finally, after prevailing in a second civil lawsuit against Donald Trump, where she was awarded about $91 million when you include pre- and post-judgment interest. She stated before that if Donald Trump continued to defame her, that her lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, would bring another defamation lawsuit and that all options remained on the table. Donald Trump has continued to defame E. Jean Carroll. He posted on Memorial Day
this was his Happy Memorial Day. So this just this week, Monday. Happy Memorial Day to all, including the human scum that is working so hard to destroy our once great country, and the radical left, Trump-hating federal judge in New York that presided over, get this, 2 separate trials that awarded a woman who I never met before. He did meet her. A quick handshake at a celebrity event 25 years ago doesn't count. $91 million for defamation. That was with the interest. It was like 80-some. She didn't know when the so-called event took place sometime in the 90s, never filed a police report, didn't have to produce the dress. So this is all defamation. He's saying that she's lying. This is what's so funny to me. So the whole premise of that case, when people are like, well, he wasn't convicted of rape. Yeah, but he was found to be a rapist. Okay? It's still bad. And I had this argument with one of our viewers, or not our regular viewers. Our viewers are smart. But the Trump supporter was like, well, he wasn't convicted. I'm like, well, but he was adjudicated, right, by a jury that he was a rapist. And they were like, well, no, really. And I'm like, yeah, really, because what happened is E. Jean Carroll sued him because she came out about it. He said she lied. That was defamation. He called her a liar. That was what this lawsuit was about. So either she was telling the truth and she wasn't lying and he was lying, in which case he defamed her, or Trump's telling the truth and she was lying, in which case he didn't defame her, he was just telling the truth. So to determine which one of them was lying, you had to determine, did he rape her? And the jury came back and said, yep, he raped her, Trump's lying. So you can say, well, it wasn't criminal. All right, well, let me just put it this way. A jury of 12 people, or 9 people, I'm sorry, it was a civil case. 9 people found that Trump assaulted her in a department store, pressed her against the wall, stuck his finger inside of her. Does that sound better, that he raped her by doing that? Does that sound better He wasn't criminally convicted. Who gives a shit? He did it. He should have been criminally convicted.
If somebody's doing that to your sister, are you going to split the hairs like that?
Exactly. If somebody's doing that to you, doing that to anybody, you should have their asshole removed. But that's what he's doing here. And here's the post. This is the Memorial Day post he just did. He's doing it again. He's calling her a liar. Saying she didn't know when the so-called event took place sometime in the 90s, never filed a police report, didn't have the produce of the dress, interview with Allison Cooper, but changed her tune in the second half. Gee, I wonder why. Under appeal, the rape charge was dropped by a jury. No, it wasn't. Or Arthur Engron, the New York State wacko judge who fined me almost $500 million. See, just bitch. Business fraud. Sexual assault. And now, 34 convictions. 34 counts, felony counts of falsifying business records to cover up a crime. And the judge has already set sentencing for a month from now. Which tells me that Engoron pretty much has an idea what he's going to do already.
Right.
We'll see. I will be extremely disappointed if he doesn't get some jail time. As severe as this was and as horrible he was and how much shit he talked about the judge and the jury, and he had the Republican House members coming down to intimidate the jury and talking shit about them and the witnesses, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get jail time. If this were you or me, we'd be looking at a year minimum. If anybody else, if viewers, if this was you doing this shit, you'd be looking at a year in prison. So, we'll see how it all goes. Anyway, we're kind of running out of some time here. How do you feel about next week, or do you have time this weekend to do stuff? Do like 30 minutes?
Could maybe squeeze that in this weekend.
Okay. So we'll cover some finance stuff then this week, and we'll work it out. We'll work something out.
Okay.
But yeah, and we'll probably cover some more on the Trump case that just happened, and we're not a news show, so we don't do breaking news typically. We're not really equipped for that here. We don't have 5 producers running around feeding us shit.
We don't have a budget.
No. So, anyway, where can everybody catch you, Lacey?
As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com, where you can find articles that I've written, information about workshops and courses that I do. If you have questions about any of those things, you can email us. You can also email us to invite yourself on the show, or a little bit nervous about doing that, you could just send us some good clips, some topic requests or questions.
Yeah.
Duncan, where would they do that?
Yeah, email us at gossipfinance88@outlook.com. Yeah, definitely invite yourself on the show. We'll talk about the Trump case, and we'll be very, very professional and civil about the whole thing. I promise we won't do anything.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too.
Sorry. Oh, we won't do anything untoward or anything like that. But thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch y'all next time.